I came home to find my brother in my bed with the woman I was supposed to marry in 47 days. The sheets were mine. The ring on her finger was mine. The roof over both of them was mine, paid for every month for 3 years without a single missed payment. And not one person who knew not one had picked up a phone to call me. I want you to sit with that for a second before I tell you the rest. My name is Marcus. I was 31 years old, living in Buckhead, Atlanta, working as a financial crimes analyst for a regional bank, the kind of job where you spend your days building airtight cases against people who think they're too clever to get caught. I was good at it, good enough that my director had already started talking about a position at our Charlotte office, a promotion I'd turned down twice because my fiancée, Camille, didn't want to leave her mother, good enough that I knew how to stay calm when every instinct in my body was telling me to fall apart. That training is the only reason I didn't destroy everything that night. That's not the beginning, though. The beginning was January. Devante, my younger brother, 27 years old, built like a running back and about as reliable as a used car's warranty, had lost his leasing consultant job at a property management company in Midtown after what he described as politics and what I suspected was something simpler. He'd called me on a Tuesday night, voice low, pride barely holding. I told him to come stay with us. Camille and I had the space. Guest room, private bathroom, separate entrance from the garage. I told him to take as long as he needed. That's what brothers do. Or at least, that's what I thought brothers did. I wasn't supposed to be home until 7 that Thursday. A vendor fraud case I'd been building for weeks collapsed on its own when the subject's internal records surfaced unexpectedly during a deposition. My director signed off on my report by 2 in the afternoon, and I thought for once I'd leave early. There was a candle shop on Peachtree Road that Camille had slowed down in front of every single time we passed it, making that soft sound women make when they want something but won't ask for it. $42 a candle. Sandalwood and amber. I'd thought about buying them a dozen times and kept talking myself out of it, telling myself it was impractical. That afternoon I decided, impractical was the point. I pulled into our driveway at 2:47 inches the afternoon. Devante's truck was parked crookedly against the curb, the way he always parked, like the laws of geometry didn't apply to him. I noticed it the way you notice furniture. My brother lived here. His truck being here meant nothing. The house was quiet in the way a house is quiet when 2 people inside it think they're alone. I heard it before I was halfway up the stairs. There are sounds you recognize even when you've never heard them quite like this. The particular rhythm of it. The headboard against the wall, the headboard I'd spent a full Saturday assembling because the instructions were in Portuguese and 2 of the dowels were cut wrong, and Camille had sat on the bed laughing at me while I cursed at an Allen wrench. That headboard. Against that wall. I stood on the stairs and my brain went completely, surgically calm. Not peaceful, calm. The way it goes calm at work when I open a file and realize in the first 3 minutes that someone is going to lose everything. I pushed the bedroom door open. Devante scrambled. He actually scrambled, feet tangling in the sheets, nearly going over the far side of the bed. Camille grabbed the comforter and pulled it up like that. Could somehow reach back through time and change what I was looking at. Neither of them said anything. I didn't either. For a long moment. Honestly, and I've thought about this 1,000 times since I think they were waiting for me to explode. To give them something to react to. To make me the volatile one in whatever story came next. My calmness confused them. It might have scared them more than anger would have. How long? I said. It wasn't really a question. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone standing slightly behind me. They looked at each other. Right then, in that first second, I understood everything. Because that look wasn't the panicked nonverbal scramble of 2 people caught making a terrible mistake. It was the look of 2 people who'd been having a private language for months, a code, a whole silent world I hadn't been invited into. How long, Camille? She was crying by then. Real tears. I'll give her that they looked real. 6 months, she said. 6 months. I did the math before she finished the syllable. Since January. Since the week after Devante moved in. Since the morning I'd made all 3 of us breakfast and felt, for the first time in years, like my life was actually coming together, the career, the house, the family, the woman I loved, the brother I was helping back to his feet. 6 months of dinners I'd cooked. 6 months of utility bills I'd paid. 6 months of wedding venue deposits and cake tastings and florist consultations and the invitations I'd ordered 192 of them, cream linen with both our names in gold, all while Camille and Devante built something in my own bedroom that I knew nothing about. I turned around and walked out. No doors slammed. No voices raised. I just walked downstairs, past the kitchen, out to my truck, and drove to the parking garage behind Lenox Square Mall, and sat there for 2 hours while my phone lit up with calls I didn't answer. Here's what I want you to understand about that parking garage. I wasn't falling apart. I was working. Because that's what you do when you've spent years building cases. You don't react until you have the whole picture. You collect first. You feel later. I opened our joint banking app. 3 accounts, $26,400 across all of them. I transferred exactly half of the liquid funds my half to a personal account Camille had never touched. Not a cent more than what was mine. Then I opened the shared cloud backup we'd set up when we moved in together. Camille kept notes on her phone. Most of them were grocery lists and workout schedules. But there was one folder, titled with Devontae's initial and a small heart, that contained 37 dated entries going back to the 3rd week of January. I read them all in the parking garage under the flat white light of a Saturday afternoon mall crowd walking past my windows. January 19th. It finally happened. Felt wrong, and right at the same time. Marcus doesn't suspect anything. February 8th. Devontae said he loves me. I said it back. I meant it. March 14th. Close call today. Marcus came home for lunch without telling anyone. We need to be more careful. My heart didn't slow down for 2 hours. April 2nd. Devontae thinks we should tell Marcus after the wedding. I told him that's cruel. He says it's practical. I don't know what I think anymore. I screenshotted everything. Opened her email from the same synced account. Read 6 weeks of messages that weren't explicit but were worse. Somehow I've been counting the minutes since he left for work, and last night felt like the realest thing I've ever had in 47 more days, and then we figure out what comes next. 47 more days. That was the day before our wedding. The family meeting happened 3 days later at my mother's house in Decatur. She'd called from my cousin Tiara's phone because I'd already blocked everyone else. We need to talk about this like family, Marcus. Sunday at 2. Everyone will be there. I should have said no. I know that now. But there was still some part of me, some part that had grown up believing that the people who shared your blood would, in the end, choose you, that needed to walk into that room and see what was real. The living room at my mother's house was arranged like a courtroom. My mother in her chair by the window. My sister Renee on the love seat with her arms crossed, already looking inconvenienced. Devontae and Camille on the main couch, close enough that their shoulders touched, wearing matching expressions of exhausted, practiced sorrow. And a single dining chair, dragged in from the kitchen, positioned directly across from all of them. For me, I stayed standing. Devontae feels terrible about this, my mother started. They both do. This isn't who either of them wanted to be. Then why were they it for 6 months? Marcus. That voice. The one she'd used my entire life to tell me I was being too much. Too loud, too rigid, too unwilling to bend. Nobody planned this. Feelings are complicated. If Camille and your brother have something real, she was wearing my ring, Mama. I know that. I paid the deposit on a venue. I wrote vows. I was 3 weeks from marrying her. I know. And you knew. Before today, you knew. And you didn't tell me. The silence that followed that sentence was different from every other silence in the room. My mother looked at her hands. She knew. They all knew. And not one of them had called me. I want to be honest with you, because this is the part I almost can't talk about even now. Standing in that living room, looking at my mother's hands in her lap, that was the moment I lost something that had nothing to do with Camille. That was the moment I understood that the version of my family I'd believed in had never quite been real. I was the reliable one, the one who co-signed my mother's car note when her credit was underwater, the one who let Devontae move in without asking a single question, the one who called every Sunday without fail. I had built my entire identity around being dependable for these people, and in the moment when I needed them to be dependable for me, they'd all decided it was more important to protect the secret than to protect me. Camille spoke then, and something in her voice had changed. The tears were still there, but the softness was gone. She'd realized the performance wasn't working. You were never really present, Marcus. You were always working, always building, always planning the future. I was right there in front of you, and sometimes I felt invisible. That's not an excuse for what happened. But it's real. So there it was. My fault. I'd driven her to it by working to pay for the wedding she wanted, the house she lived in, the life she said she was excited about. Devontae nodded along like this was reasonable. My sister Renee, I noticed, didn't argue with it. I looked around the room one more time. Here's what's going to happen, I said. I'm walking out of here. I'm going to live with the knowledge of exactly who all of you are. And in about 4 days, every person on that guest list is going to find out why they're not coming to a wedding anymore. My mother stood up. For the first time that afternoon, her voice had an edge. Marcus, don't do something you can't take back. I didn't do anything, I said. I'm just the one telling the truth. I walked out. Nobody followed. Monday morning, I started building the case the same way I would at work. Credit freeze. New checking account at a different bank. Locks changed at the house. Formal eviction notice to Devante, 30 days. Certified mail. Legally precise. No emotion in a single sentence. I called my real estate agent and told him to list by the end of the week. The email to the 192 guests went out Saturday morning at 9 a.m. sharp. I'd scheduled it from my hotel room the night before. Subject line, wedding cancellation, Marcus and Camille. 4 paragraphs. Factual. No insults. Nothing I couldn't prove. Just the truth about why there would be no ceremony, and where people could direct questions about any money they'd spent on travel or gifts. I turned off my phone and drove out towards Stone Mountain, 3 hours on back roads where nobody knew my name. When I turned my phone back on at sunset, I had 111 unread messages. The fallout was quiet and thorough. Camille worked as a surgical dental hygienist at a practice in Sandy Springs whose partners ran in the same circles as half the people on that guest list. She wasn't fired. But things shifted. Hours changed. Referrals stopped. By month 3, she'd handed in her notice. Devante had landed a sales position at a car lot in Chamblee 2 weeks before my email went out. Car sales runs on trust, referrals, and the kind of reputation that travels fast in a city like Atlanta where everybody knows somebody who knows somebody. His numbers collapsed. Management gave him 90 days to recover. He didn't. None of that was my doing. I'd told the truth one time to people who deserved to know it. Everything else was just gravity. The house sold in 9 days. I accepted a cash offer $8,000 under asking from a couple relocating from Charlotte. The irony was not lost on me, and used the proceeds to accept the position in Portland, Oregon that my director had mentioned 8 months earlier. Better title, better salary, 3,000 miles of distance. I arrived in Portland in November with a rented truck, 6 boxes, and $1,400 in savings after deposits. My apartment smelled like someone else's cooking, and the rain never really stopped. I didn't care. Nobody in that city knew my name in a way that came with a story attached. Anonymous was the only thing I needed to be. I showed up early every day and left late every night, and solved problems nobody else wanted to touch. Within 10 months, I was managing a team of 11 people. Promoted again 14 months after that. Corner office. Real salary. The kind of position I'd turned down twice to stay in a city that hadn't deserved the sacrifice. I met my wife Jolene at a colleague's housewarming in the Pearl District. She was a wildlife rehabilitator, the kind of person whose daily work consisted of earning the trust of animals that had every reason not to give it. She had this way of asking questions that felt like actual curiosity rather than small talk. We talked for 4 hours about things that didn't matter, and I drove home thinking about her in a way I hadn't let myself think about anyone in almost 2 years. On our 3rd date, I told her everything. I watched her face while I did it, looking for pity or judgment or the careful, diplomatic expression people make when they're deciding you're too complicated. None of it came. She reached across the table and put her hand over mine and said, quietly, "They didn't deserve you." That was the moment I understood I was going to be okay. The harassment started around month 18. Old contacts I barely remembered sliding into my messages with variations of the same script. "Your sister says you won't pick up. Don't you think enough time has passed?" Then my uncle texted from a number I'd missed, blocking Camille had been seen asking about me at a spot near my old neighborhood in Atlanta, claiming to be an old friend, asking where I worked, whether I was seeing anyone. I updated my building security, changed my daily patterns, began documenting. Then an anonymous email arrived at my work address, copied to my entire department, including 3 levels of management above me. "You should all know that Marcus is not who he claims to be. He's manipulative and vindictive, and destroyed his own family. Don't trust anything he says about his past. No signature, no specifics, just poison, carefully aimed." I forwarded it to HR within the hour, along with the full timeline, the cease and desist I'd already sent, and every screenshot I'd kept since that first Thursday in the parking garage of Lenox Square Mall. HR traced the email to a public network in the city where Camille had moved. They couldn't prove it conclusively. They didn't need to. I filed a police report in her jurisdiction not to press charges, but to establish a paper trail, to have her name in a system associated with a pattern. Then I hired a paralegal service to send a formal cease and desist citing the specific statutes, sent it certified mail to her current address, which I located through public records in about 20 minutes. The emails stopped. 3 years after I left Atlanta, I had a wife, a daughter Aria, born in March, with Jolene's eyes and absolutely no interest in sleeping a 4-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood outside Portland, and a regional operations role I'd earned, one solved problem at a time. Everything I had was built from scratch. Everything was real. The final piece came over Thanksgiving dinner at Jolene's parents' house. Her uncle, a quiet man who sat on a healthcare licensing board, mentioned they'd recently investigated a dental hygienist who'd been running unauthorized patient database searches, tracking someone out of state through the Health Information Exchange, looking up addresses, employer records, insurance information. He said the searches all centered on one person. I put my fork down. What was her name? He told me. The hygienist's own audit trail had documented every search automatically, as federal privacy law requires. No clinical justification, no treatment relationship, just months of unauthorized access to protected records, all pointing at one person's information like an arrow. The board had launched a full investigation, license suspension pending outcome. If the pattern held, and it clearly held, she was looking at permanent revocation plus potential civil exposure. Her own records had built her own case. I'd kept every document in a folder organized chronologically for 3 years. Not because I'd planned for this moment, but because I'm a financial crimes analyst, and documentation is what I do. When the board investigator requested background information on the pattern of contact, that folder was ready inside of an hour. She had nuked her own career with her own hands. I just kept the receipts. 3 weeks later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I answered out of habit. My mother's voice. Older than I remembered. Softer at the edges. "Devante is struggling," she said. "He can't keep work. He and Camille ended things. He's not doing well, Marcus. And I know you don't owe us anything. But he's still your brother." "He was my brother," I said. "He made a different choice. We all made wrong choices. The way we handled that meeting, what I said to you that day, I've thought about it every week since." Neither of us spoke for a moment. "I'm not coming back, Mama. I have a wife, I have a daughter, I have a life that nobody here gave me. I built it myself, from nothing, after y'all made clear I was on my own. I'm not dismantling it." "I know." Her voice cracked slightly. "I just miss you. I know you do." And I did. That's the part of this story that doesn't have a clean ending. Missing someone and understanding that you can't go back to what that relationship cost you. Those two things live in the same house and you just learn to close the door on one of them. "Take care of yourself," I said. "I mean that." I hung up. Jolene came into the kitchen with Aria on her hip, reaching for me with both hands, the way babies reach for things they've decided belong to them. I held her and looked over her head at my wife, who knew everything about me and had chosen to stay anyway. "This is what I want to tell you, if you've ever been the dependable one. If you've ever been the person everyone counts on, the one who shows up, the one who pays for things and fixes things and makes things work, and you've done all of it and still been the one who got left behind. The mistake isn't that you were too good to them. The mistake is believing that generosity creates loyalty. It doesn't. Loyalty comes from character, and character is either there or it isn't. You cannot build it for someone else with your own labor. The question I want you to sit with is this. Where in your life right now are you extending trust that hasn't been earned? Not love. Love is fine. Trust. Operational trust. The kind where you hand someone your security and assume they'll handle it carefully. Is there somewhere you're doing that on faith alone? If this story made you feel something, if you recognized yourself in any part of it, the betrayal or the silence, or the moment of standing in a room and realizing the people who should have been with you weren't, drop a number in the comments. Leave a 1 if you think Marcus handled this exactly right, a 2 if you think there was a moment he went too far, or a 3 if you've lived through something close to this and you're still carrying it. I read every single comment. Every one. And tell me where you're watching from today. What time is it where you are? There's something about knowing this story is reaching people across so many different places and hours that genuinely moves me. If you're not subscribed yet, I want to ask you personally, not as a script, not as an obligation, but because the people who find these stories tend to be people who've learned things the hard way, and I think you deserve a space where that experience is treated with honesty. Hit subscribe. It takes 2 seconds and it means we get to keep doing this together. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences. Fully rewritten and reimagined in Atlanta, Georgia to create original content. Any resemblance to real people or events is coincidental.